Welcome to the Career Jitsu Podcast. We are so excited today. We are humbled and honored to have this guest today. Our guest today is Alan Marquez, also known as Gumby. He is known as Gumby throughout the Jiu Jitsu world because he has been around in the Jiu Jitsu world for a super long time. In fact, 30 years of training. He is a 5th degree black belt under Half Gracie. And he is talking to us all the way from across the country, from San Jose, California. He is a pioneer in Jiu Jitsu because he was a co-founder of On the Mat as a journalist. He was one of the first grappling journalists that there were that spreaded jiu-jitsu throughout the country. So we are so honored to have him with us today to talk about the connections between the art of jiu-jitsu and his amazing career. So welcome aboard, Gumby.
Thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to this.
We are very excited to have you on the show. You have really undertaken such a path to success in so many different ways. For example, establishing your own academy and 30 years of jiu-jitsu, you do not look old enough to have done 30 years of jiu-jitsu, so it definitely kept you young. We want to hear about that journey. Founder of Civic Cause, former CEO of your downtown association. So many different ramifications of your career. So let's just start from the beginning. Talk to us about where it all started with your career path, how you grew into these different endeavors. And then after that, I'd love to just hear about how you got into jiu-jitsu and how those two things meshed.
All right. I think all of it started off of after college. So I had the twin things of getting out of school, Santa Clara University over here, which I'm in the Silicon Valley. So everybody winds up working in computers. And that's exactly what I wound up doing. I started building quality assurance, software quality assurance. I worked at a variety of companies, including Apple over here. But I want to say, if I kind of backtrack on the tech side of the career, kind of going twin thing on that, coming out of college, what do you do with your life? Part of it's like the career aspect. I started off working in tech companies around here in the mid 90s at that point. And also it's like, what do you do from a personal, what's fun to do around here? And I was fortunate enough I discovered jiu-jitsu through the Ultimate Fighting Championship. My roommate in college had actually ordered UFC #1. So I was totally aware of what it was. And I did judo as a kid. And coincidentally, where I was living at the time, Sunnyvale, which is 2 cities over from where San Jose is. On my way to work, I passed up a Half Gracie's Academy, which he had opened up in August of 96. So it just so happens I started off my career and my jiu-jitsu literally within months of each other. And I drove by it a couple of times, and I was one of the first students to sign up at the Mountain View Academy.
Wow. So that doesn't happen often, Jason, with our guests, that they start both at the same time. Usually one comes first and there's like 10 or 20 years and then the other one comes first. With this, starting them both at the same time, going into tech, which is probably a steep learning curve in the beginning, going into jiu-jitsu, which is definitely a steep learning curve in the beginning. Did you find that they helped you out, like dealing with your challenges in jiu-jitsu made you better at dealing with the learning curve in tech and dealing with how to deal with pressure and challenges?
I would say the path on tech and career path that I was on at that point was a little bit more traditional at that point. Traditional in the sense that go out of college, get a job, have a career, move through, transfer companies if need be and whatnot. But it's a path that many people are taking at that point. The jiu-jitsu path back at that point was really unknown. Nobody, 30 years ago, there was 3 academies in Northern California, but we were fortunate in that sense. California, we had academies, obviously, but there's plenty of people that didn't have academies and whatnot. So it was absolutely the path least traveled at that point. And at the time I started that off, they were very kind of, this is my career path, or this is how I make a living in career path. And I don't know if you know what your career path is just coming straight out of school at that point. At least I didn't. I was kind of going through, hey, this is an opportunity for me. Again, it's also being in the area that I happen to be at, Silicon Valley, in the late 90s. Tech jobs were abundant at that point versus jiu-jitsu opening up at that point. It's one of the first academies in the country. Again, martial arts at that point wasn't really anything that I think adults did coming into it. It was mainly a kids.
Back then, when you told people you do jujitsu, you probably needed to explain what it was because now everybody knows what.
I wouldn't necessarily say everybody, but it was easier to say I trained UFC, which is cringe. I get it, but if you had an inkling of what it was, that was your introduction to it. You have to remember that the Ultimate Fighting Championship, in Half Gracie form, when Royce Gracie fought, it was essentially an infomercial for jiu-jitsu, and it worked because that was my gateway into that. I saw that and it's like, hey, amazing. Like, I don't necessarily want to fight in a cage, but it looks like fun to be able to train that. And oh, by the way, a Gracie happens to open up a studio like a mile away from my house. So, there's a couple of circumstances that made me extremely fortunate in both my career and my jiu-jitsu path, which is at this point the same thing right now, right?
Absolutely. And you've earned your 5th degree. I mean, that is incredible. Can you tell us a little bit about what, for you, what did it take to stay with it for that long, not give up, be consistent? Like, what are some of your strategies or your philosophies that helped you do that?
I am stubborn, like to the point of almost my detriment. When I got my 5th degree, Half Gracie gave a little bit of a speech and said, like, he didn't think I would last a day at the academy. And to be fair, seeing me come in there at the time, the way the jiu-jitsu was, I'd say you had about a 95% dropout rate in jiu-jitsu, at least at Half's Academy at that point. And the reason for that is in terms of running it as a business, jiu-jitsu was a very hot commodity 30 years ago. Like, in terms of the martial arts, in terms if you wanted to know this, because of the success it saw in the UFC. And where were you going to train it? There weren't that many academies. So Half ran it like you couldn't run an academy in that way in this time now. And I've had this conversation with Half multiple times in the sense that you came in there, you weren't friends, you were food. Like, it was survival of the fittest at this point. And I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing on that. It's just the way it was. And, I liked it. But I got smashed to start off with. Like, I didn't have the physical attributes necessarily. Like, flexibility is almost kind of the worst attribute to have to start off with because it just means you can take a beating. But again, being stubborn, it's like, I just, I got into it. I put so much into it. I was working so hard. It's like, I'm getting smashed. Like, it took me 6 months to be able to tap anybody out over there, even though we all started off at the same time. And it was just like, yeah, there's no way I'm going out with a scorecard that much in my favor. It's like, best out of 5, best out of 7, best out of 83, whatever it was. It's like, I wasn't going to quit until I got a little bit of a head on that, was my mentality at that point. So that's honestly what kept me going. It's like I'm the innate stubbornness that I want to do that, and then innate ability or want to like have to see things through to the end, whatever that end was. And this is also an era whereas when I started off, Half was obviously a black belt, and there was a couple of blue belts in the academy, and that was it. Like, purple belts were unicorns back in the day. Like, there weren't that many there was a couple of American black belts. You saw some of the guys just got coral belts. But for the most part, like, at least in this area, it was all white belts, and you can count on maybe 2 hands how many blue belts there were in Northern California at that point.
So that had to be extremely difficult starting at the same point as everybody else. And they're like moving and they're crushing you. And you're like, but we all started at the same time. And not having the physical attributes of some of these other guys, that would be demoralizing for 95% of the people. And that's probably why you said they had a 95% dropout.
I mean, again, you were food when you came in, and I certainly fed into that or contributed to that culture back in the day where it's like I took my lumps. If you weren't going to be one of those ones that were part of the team or part of that, like if you weren't going to take your lumps, if you're going to leave, like, so what? 30 people would be there the next week to replace you. Like, you really kind of had to earn your stripes in that sense that, you came in that first day, we're going to try to kill you. And you came in the second day, we tried to kill you. And you came in the third day, we tried to kill you. And it never really stopped. And it wasn't necessarily personal, but because there was such a turnover rate at that point, you weren't going to get close to somebody until like they've been around for a little while. So once you kind of took that through there, like I consider the guys out of that era to be some of my closest friends now because of what we went through. It's almost kind of like this PTSD that we all had on that. I'll say the other thing too, in terms of physical attributes, like one part I forgot to mention is I start off with a friend of mine who actually I haven't talked to in years. I'm 6'2" and now I'm 190, but back then I was like a $150. He was 6'8", like almost 300 pounds. Not an athletic bone in his body, but he just fell on top of me. I had to work out from underneath him. So like, the physical attribute things like, yeah, you're literally twice my weight. And remember, Jiu Jitsu is really kind of, you look at Half Gracie. He was 6'2", 170, fighting 300 pounds. I didn't think that would happen overnight, but there was that kind of path that you saw there. It's like, oh, because Half Gracie did this in the UFC and beat up guys that were physically bigger than himself or physically had attributes based off of skill. If I kept working on the skill aspect of it, one of these days I could have that ability to do that, whereas size and strength didn't matter, which is, I have some thoughts and feelings about like how that is these days, but that was kind of the promise that we went through. And we lived it at that point too. It's like, the toughest guys at the gym or the most dangerous or whatever you want to put it weren't necessarily the biggest guys at the gym. Like, I came up in the era at that point, BJ Penn was a main training partner of mine, or the Camarillo brothers, or quite a few notable people came through. Again, not that many schools at that point, not the biggest guys in the world. So seeing that it's possible will get you going through, as opposed to I'm just getting wailed on. It's the biggest guys in there. Like I really have to. Half's not even that big of a guy by comparison. Like, he walks around 170, 180, significantly shorter than I am. So the belief that technique would get you through this was an important thing. And just knowing that I can go ahead and once my technique catches up to that, I would have that ability too. And that's what will really drive you through. That essentially somebody did it beforehand and I just had to kind of follow along that path, even though we all did start basically at the same time.
It's like the benefits of being not having the physical attributes like somebody big and strong. If you're small and weak, it's like necessity is a virtue, right? It's like you don't have a choice. Like, you can't just muscle through something, you have to be able to think and use your technique and get out of positions that you normally wouldn't be able to just muscle out of. So I think it's a good thing. Actually, for you, you were able to progress your skill level probably faster than somebody who just jumps in and manhandles.
Theoretically, really, it lit a fire into my butt. I'll say that much. Like, like I said, I'm flexible. So I use my flexibility as a crutch as much as anything else. Like, people will tell you stop using strength. Nobody will tell you to stop being flexible. Like, when I started hitting a level, was I doing it because I actually knew what I was doing? Is because I was so noodly, I was just getting out of stuff. That flexibility, I can tell you after 30 years, goes away after a point too. Like, the technique comes first. Like, you got to go through that process, and then you can go ahead, add your flexibility, your speed, your strength, which is an attribute. Go ahead and use it if you have it. But I think that wasn't necessarily apparent to me back when I started training, but it's much more apparent to me now about how everything works together.
Yeah, you don't necessarily think about that until a little bit later, Your Gumbyism was was in full speed,
Right. I think it's so funny that you say that because it's very true. Nobody ever says you use your cardio too much, or you use your flexibility too much, or you use your quickness too much. But everybody complains about the strong guy, don't they? Oh, you're using strength. But it is.
If you're underneath
right.
one of
It's
those
just,
people, yeah, for sure you're going to complain about that. But
if I had it, I would use it to crush everybody. If I had it, without mercy. But you're right. There is a discrimination towards strong people in that kind of, oh, you're just using strength. But nobody ever told you you're just using your flexibility. Nobody ever said that. Interesting.
But the trick is, like, learn what the rules are, learn what it is, and then you can use whatever gifts that you have to enhance it. I'll tell you, like, the answer is you're using too much flexibility, strength, speed, whatever, if you're using it as a substitution for your technique. If you have the technique down and then you do put all this other stuff into it, then you're using it correctly.
Yeah.
That's well said. Yeah.
Yeah. Can we fast forward here, Gumby, a little bit in your career, in your life as a martial artist? You had the academy and you trained Jiu Jitsu, you had your tech background, and then you started to kind of leverage your tech experience and being a martial arts school right in the downtown of San Jose. you started getting involved. And can you talk to our listeners a little bit about how you started getting involved in the Downtown Association and the business improvement district that you talked about? And you actually started a cause called Civic Cause. Like, how did that come to fruition for you?
Okay. Fast forward quite a few years in my career to actually running an academy. And I should preface this by the fact, the reason why I opened up an academy is I like being in the academy. Like I like having a home base. I like working with people on a face-to-face basis versus the whole on the mat thing had me traveling around the world. Like I got to visit a lot of places. I got to travel. I got to be at a bunch of events. I got to do many great and wonderful things. But travel gets old after a while. Like, when you're gone like 3 or 4 weekends a month, and sometimes like, I had a stretch I was gone like 11 events or 11 weekends in a row. I was just tired. I started this off. I got into this because I like training. So when you set up and you have a home base in an academy, the home base of your academy is not just the academy internal. There's an external part of the community as well. Your neighbors, your community, the city, the neighborhood, whatever you want to say to that. And if you, from purely selfish reasons, if you don't know what's going on in your community, you're doomed to have some things happen to you that you wouldn't be super happy about. Like, you want to have that kind of involvement. You want to be a good producing, good member of society, so to speak. Like, you want to show that your gym, your studio, your business, whatever it is part of the conversation, part of that community. That visibility goes two ways, that like, maybe I'll draw more people into my academy this way. But then when these external forces happens, these things, and it could be something as mundane as like, like parking or crime rates or whatever, like the typical things that you would have like in a neighborhood. You want to have a say on that. Like, you'd rather have the ability to have that influence than not have that influence. So all those are the motivations for me to, as a volunteer and a board member for years, joining up with the Downtown Association, which is technically a business improvement district, whereas every city has a business improvement district. Like, it's not unique to San Jose. Like, there's thousands of them across the country right now that have that. Like, it's similar to a chamber of commerce in that sense, except Chamber of Commerce obviously are geographically bound, but they're kind of businesses in that geographic location versus a business improvement district is kind of the neighborhood first. And then you actually have a little bit more of a mix of type of interests within that. And consequently, me being me, with the involvement that I had with that, is if I'm going to be involved in something, I'm going to do something, I'm going to put a lot of attention and focus and drive into it. In the same way, it's like, why did I stick it out with jiu-jitsu after getting my butt kicked a bunch of times? It boils down to the fact that I'm stubborn. Like, there's a certain level of that stubbornness that got me to a black belt, got me to academy owner, got me to, on the mat and doing all this other stuff. But it carries through for everything else I do. If I'm going to do this, like, I'm going to go ahead. If it's worth me putting my time into it and delegating it that way, I'm going to do it the right way, and I'm going to see how far I can get into it. And I don't know, like, if that drive is competitive or not, or if I would describe that as competitive against anybody else, that I have to beat somebody to like, somebody else is going to have this position, or like, no, it's just like, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it really, really well and put a lot of focus and energy into that. Like, there's the only things in my mind that are worth putting your time into.
Yeah.
So have you, like, in all of these endeavors, have you faced a lot of failure? It sounds like you've done very, very well in everything you've done. Have you faced any big roadblocks, any failures where you fell on your face? You're like, damn, that sucks. You had to pick yourself back up, brush yourself off, and like restart.
Like, I don't know if I would call it failures or learning experiences. Like, jiu-jitsu, you've probably heard that one. Like, there's no losing in jiu-jitsu. You either win or you learn. I've kind of felt that way in the sense that everything that I've done so far has led me up to this moment. Like, if I had that big win or something else, like this particular path opened up and I stayed on that particular path, particularly the way that I'm at, or the way that I am, I should say, that I tend to kind of hyper-focus and drive towards something, would I have pursued something else at that point? If I had stayed like totally just focused on my tech career, would I have put my energy and attention on the mat? Would have I opened up an academy? Would I have even gotten a black belt at that stage of my life at that point? Would I have had that kind of drive in there if I didn't prioritize and focus things? So In that sense, if there was something that didn't necessarily go completely my way, it was always kind of a side quest as opposed to my main quest. Like, like it all kind of led me back over to here and to where we're at right now, or to where I'm at right now. And that's the way that I look at things. So like, that's not to say that I haven't had setbacks. That's not to say that like everything like I've touched has turned into gold. It's not to say that at all. Like, I've had plenty of days of, even kind of self-doubt, and it's like, oh, was this the right path, or was this the right choice? But it's like, well, like, this is where we're at right now. Like, like no sense in dwelling on the past on this one. Like, let's see what opportunity opened up and go forward on this. And I'll bring it full circle back into jiu-jitsu, where I often tell my students, a move failed for one of two reasons. The first reason why a move fails is because you didn't do it right, which is perfectly acceptable and understandable. Like, it happens, like you didn't place your hand in the right way, you screwed up your left from your right, you used your foot instead of your, whatever. Like, you screwed up. That will happen plenty of times. But there gets to be a point that you did everything you were supposed to do on this. You executed the move perfectly, and you had everything that you were supposed to do on this, but then your opponent countered and they reacted and they did everything perfectly, and therefore the move didn't work at that point. And in that sense, when that happens, essentially when one door closes off, another window of opportunity opens up there. If you want to talk about a jiu-jitsu mindset in business and life without sounding too cultish about this, which I always kind of fear about that, I just kind of looked at like, oh, that one wasn't meant to be. I'm going to go ahead and turn around and move on to something else. And you have to do that every day that you're on the mat. And that mindset gets drilled into your head.
Parallel right there that you're talking about, Alan, is so ingrained in jiu-jitsu that is jiu-jitsu philosophy explanation at its finest, being able to have that ability to adapt and change directions when you need to. So, you're like you just said, on the mats, you have to be able to, you try a technique, it doesn't work, you have to be able to switch and adapt and try something different immediately in the moment. That kind of mentality really helps you in business. Am I not right?
100%. Like, you got to have like, look, I'll take a little bit back into the jiu-jitsu realm and stuff like that. Somebody might roll with me. It's like, oh my God, you're a black belt or fifth or whatever I am right now. It's like you're 10 steps ahead of me. And it's like, I'm not that smart. Like, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't do this. Like, I know where I want to go. Like, the eventual goal is I want to beat you and submit you. But the difference is, like, I can recognize, based off of my experience in jiu-jitsu at least, where I am in that given moment, what my options are, and then make that switch very quickly to what it is, versus the less experienced person will have in their heads, I want to do an armbar from the guard. I'm going to do an armbar from the guard. I'm going to do from the armbar in the guard. And an experienced person will see that coming from a mile away. And the second that you're predictable, that I know what's about to happen, you're never going to do that to me at that point. So it's very much like the lesson that jiu-jitsu gives is being present in the moment and being able to think through and give the appropriate response at any time. Let's make another parallel on this self-defense. It was like, is your self-defense going to be that I know some kind of special break the wrist and walk away Rex Kwon Do that will save you out of this particular situation? As an instructor, I can tell you how many times that I can go ahead and work with somebody that's a reasonable level, that's been doing this for a while, show it to them over and over again, and then know that when they actually comes into sparring, training, competing, whatever, how long it's going to take them for them to actually do the move. Do I actually think that if I did a self-defense seminar, showed you this person that's never trained before, hey, here's this move that will get you out of a life and death situation, that when that happens, when all that adrenaline's kicked in, when the stress is coming in, and that crazy person jumps out of the bushes to attack them at that point, that you're going to be able to pull off that move at that point? I'm going to flatly say I don't think that's the case. But if you train your mind and your body and your spirit, if you want to be that way, on a consistent basis to respond to stressful situations on a repeated basis, controlled stressful situations, and that you learn to go ahead and think through things, take the best path of action, accept the retreat at this point, and then move forward on that, which jiu-jitsu does on a daily basis, I strongly feel like that would affect all areas of your life, including your business and your career path.
I love that word you use too, Gumby, the word unpredictable. We haven't heard that word yet in our podcast yet, Frank. The word
I don't think we
unpredictable.
have.
Be unpredictable when you need to be is a really
That
great.
is definitely one of the takeaways. What we have heard is how many people have said UFC 1 has made them want to take jiu-jitsu. We've heard that all the time, but the predictable and being unpredictable was great. The other thing that I love that you said was constantly putting yourself in controlled, stressful situations because like I teach public speaking and that is exactly like rolling because you can prepare all the time, but things go wrong. A lot of things go wrong. And if you continually do public speaking, what are you doing? You're continually putting yourself in a situation where you need to be present in the moment, breathe, look at where you are, and pivot off of it and move off of it. So I just see a lot of parallels to that and people in the business world in stressful situations. That's a great takeaway, right?
When do you stick to the script and when do you go off the cuff to know your audience, know the situation? And
Exactly. And even like a lot of the books that I've read have said if there's a loud bang outside or big noise, acknowledge it. Don't look like you're on a videotape on a script. Say, "Whoa, what was that?" Or if you hear like another room applauding, say, "Oh, thank you. They're already applauding for me." Make it in the moment, but it's very hard for people to do that if they don't do it often. Like you said, you can't just take a 2-hour public speaking seminar and think you're going to be able to handle all that. You have to go and do the public speaking and have somebody coach you and continually learn. And so it's really a process. It's not, you can't package it up into a box and just give it to somebody.
yeah, and to your point also, I think you're going to have the bangs and the applause and the hecklers and whatnot on that. Like you have to deal with some kind of case. So like, how do you ever know like what you're capable of until you actually go ahead and test it out? Like, you can go into Fight Club. It's like, how do you ever know, like, if you've never been to a fight, you've never been hit in the face, like, how do you know what's going on? Like, hey, in society right now, it's like, in that kind of uncontrolled situation, it's like we're not allowed to hit each other in the face. With few exceptions, maybe in the friendly confines of the dojo when you have like, a few of the ground rules and the so-called safety net that you're dealing with a group of consenting adults in that. Yeah, but where else can you have that kind of, real stress test on a regular basis? And that we love and enjoy that. But it is a conflict, it is combat, it is these types of things. The best event, the best gift you'll get this, it's like, so I can do a flying armbar. It's like, outside of the confines of jiu-jitsu, like, what's the value of my skill of being able to do this? What's the value, however, the skill of the fact that, you have grace under fire, so to speak, is probably the best word on that. Your ability to think through that you've been trained on a regular basis on this. Like, I won't mention name, well, like, I don't think anybody that's seeing this, but like I was on, when I had that CEO position, somebody came up and like, they have all these leadership camps and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, we took CEOs, we took them out to the woods and they banged a drum and, put war paint on, they ran around in the forest and stuff like that. And I'm just sitting there trying to keep a straight face on this. It's like, you do you. And that's what's kind of like, I recognize what you're trying to do on that is kind of break it down to a primal level, so to speak, get you firing off, like retool your instincts and, go from there. And I was just like, in my mind, that would be almost a waste of time for me to go through on that because I do that on a regular basis. And I've gone through all these drills and mental things and physical things. And, it's not just a weekend trip for me. It's like, I do this on a regular basis, like people that have been in those kind of stressful situations and have trained to be through those stressful situations. And again, like you have to get this. Like I wasn't trying to make fun of the executives out in the wood in their underwear and stuff like that, or maybe I am. But like, realistically, like what's one of the ways that you can put yourself in those stressful situations and really train your body, mind, and spirit through things, if not the constant stress that jiu-jitsu will put you through.
Yeah.
Right. And that is one of the benefits of jujitsu because you really can go like 90% and not hurt somebody if you do it right. I mean, there are injuries, but with jujitsu, as far as that stress testing, you can go very, very hard with somebody that you trust, and you're going to be in almost a real fight. And then it's in a safe environment. There's not a lot of other places that put you under that 99% in a safe environment. That's one of the great things about jujitsu, for sure.
Yeah, I would agree on that, And like there's plenty of ways of getting your zen on and going through that, but like the idea that like I'll go one step further than this, that I'm working against an active thinking opponent that's trying to do this back at me. To me, it's like it's a physical chess match in that sense, which is so great. surfing's a great activity too, but you're never going to win against the ocean. Like, it's not a sentient thing as much as people make it out to be. You have this kind of waving thing. Like, the ocean is not plotting to get you. If you're doing jiu-jitsu, I am plotting to get you. And we're going back and forth in a healthy way, but going through that's pretty important.
Yeah.
And having
Great
that right
analogy.
mindset too, having that right mindset and your knowledge and skills in jiu-jitsu translates over into that professional life that you have. Can you talk to our listeners about Civic Cause? Gumby, what is Civic Cause? Can you tell everybody what this is?
Yeah, it's a project. So I finished off on the Downtown Association in January. It was supposed to be a temporary position, which lasted April through January, which was a lot longer than I anticipated doing that. It was not on my bingo card that I would do that. I was always kind of civically engaged, but like when I took on that position, I really went down the deep end on that. And I've had the academy for 17 years. I've been doing jiu-jitsu for 30 years. So two things. Like, number one, it was kind of refreshing to know that I could do something else. Like, I feel like I've done not that I don't have more to do in jiu-jitsu, not that I didn't enjoy it and stuff like that, but there's a comfort zone on that, right? To know that I can get out of my comfort zone and do something and be effective in a different way was pretty awesome to be able to do that. And whereas I would not want to be in the situation that I was a year ago in doing that, I think I learned a lot. It's like, well, what can I go ahead and do with that knowledge? And being here in the Silicon Valley, it's like, I remember back in the days when everything had to be a .com. Now everything has to be AI. So I made a determination at this year that I hear a lot of talk about what artificial intelligence is and how it's supposedly going to revolutionize the world, which, I'm not quite sure how that's going to touch me because I don't have a fear of being replaced by artificial intelligence. But now I have if not a chunk of time, at least a commitment that was taken away from me that I can go ahead and pour something into right there. I'm going to go ahead and take a deep dive, get a couple of subscriptions to Anthropic and OpenAI and see what happens with that. And there's the combination of wanting to do that, a bit of the entrepreneurial mindset that I have. And then it's the knowledge that I picked up from working on the Downtown Association, how could I, if not automate that, codify that, and then go forward on that. A couple of steps back is one of the unusual things about this when I had that job is I had to have an administrative assistant because I was in 7 or 8 meetings a day, which my normal average of meetings is 0. So that was a huge kind of adjustment for me to make. If you want to have that level of civic engagement, I got talking to all the local politicians from the mayor to council people to members of Congress and stuff like that. And the amount to actually make something happen, to kind of go behind the scenes and see the things that would actually affect you as a citizen. How do those things get done? It's how are the deals actually made? I got a slice of that. I got a peek behind the curtain to see how it really went. When you go and you're going to have a public hearing at City Hall before they have the vote, I'll tell you right now, those votes are determined well before that public hearing happens. They've had the decisions because somebody went in and had a talk with them. There was an influence. These are weeks, if not month-long processes that happen before oh, we're going to have public comment before we do the vote. Trust me, everybody in that room knows what the vote's going to be. They'll line it up in that way. And as a professional, as a lobbyist, as a CEO of a bid, as whatever, as a full-time thing, it's there's one sense it's a lot of hours and work to be part of those conversations. And I really kind of walked away from that thinking that that's well and good. And what you get in is what you get out of it. But these are decisions that affect everybody. So everybody should be able to be part of that decision, or at least part of the conversation from an earlier process and going through that. So the idea on this was, hey, let's go ahead and see what I can do with that. See if I couldn't put that power back in folks have and make it out of the business. And of course, me being me, like I said, it's the same syndrome I have that I don't have leftovers in my house, and there's no such thing as a half open bag of potato chips. It's if I'm going to open up the bag, I'm going to eat every single chip in the bag. If I'm going to start jiu-jitsu, I'm going to get all the way to the black belt and eventually open an academy and stuff like that. If I'm going to go ahead and do a project like this, I'm going to spend hundreds of hours sitting there programming and thinking this through and setting this up. And again, like part of that might have been trained, part of that might be just my personality to begin with, and this is what I want to do. But the not short answer at this point right now is that's what led me to going ahead and forming Civic Cause. The idea is like, let me do a real Silicon Valley thing, do the artificial intelligence. Let me see if I can't do the venture capital thing and talk to folks. Let me see if I can't have one foot back in the world of the civic thing that, like, I don't want to be fully immersed in it anymore, but let me see what impact I can still have on that.
So can you just tell us what the software, the product, what does it do? What exactly does it do?
So essentially what it does is it tracks all those civic signals from news to agendas that happen to be on City Hall, in city council meetings or county supervisor board meetings. If I take a couple of steps back, like we're American citizens over here, and every American citizen has 4 layers of government that are over your head. You have your city, you have the county, you have the state, and you have federal. And the crazy thing is, it's like each of those levels of government, like they're not even always talking to each other. They contradict each other. They silo things. They fight back and forth. Like whatever your political slant is, I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, Independent, Pastafarian, whatever. It's a pretty insane setup, in my opinion. I only care of things as a citizen. If I see something, like, I don't really care whose job it is to solve it. Like, it's my department, this is your thing. I just care it gets solved. Like, I don't want to see this bickering. Like, I want to kind of have that opening on this. So I really kind of set up to, which was my job when I was the Downtown Association, just focus on the city and county level, because those are the levels that I can actually touch. Like, I can actually go out, or like somebody with a little bit of work can go ahead and get a meeting with a council person, or you can get in touch with somebody local. You can care, or you can rally about like what the federal government's doing all you want to. It's not like you're going to make a phone call or set up an appointment and go see Donald Trump, wherever the sitting president is at this point. You can actually have an effect at a local level, at the city level and the county level, maybe at the state level, but it starts off at the city level. Like, no, these are the things that quite frankly affect you on a day-to-day basis. And you should have the ability as a citizen to be informed the whole way through, to take charge of things and see how it's going in a system where, quite frankly, it's so siloed. Like, there's so many different factors that play on this, just from where I'm at, like the way that the city and the county go against each other. There's overlaps within there. There's things that's distinct with them. It's like, as John Q. Public, you don't know that, nor should you know that. Like, you just want to know that everything's being effective on this. So with Civic Cause, it's like, yeah, I don't care if it's the city or the county that does this. This is what I care about. Like, I care about housing affordability, homelessness, small business support, name that, and then pick that, or pick a particular issue on this. Like, I care about the homeless encampment that's down the street from me, and then track that. And then, like, who's responsible for that? Where do I have to show up to? Where can I actually make a difference on the things that actually affect me? That was the goal that I try to build.
So just to be clear, so somebody would go onto your software or your program and they'd say, I want to stop hunger or I want to do something to help the hungry in my community. How do I get involved in that? And your software will look all around and find from county and city what's going on, and then give them a solution to how they can get involved.
Like, similar to that, yeah. Like, we haven't, like, there'll be issues and there'll be people that are for and against it. So ideally, it's like, you want to know, like, when those decisions are made, what are the pros and cons on that? Ideally, the business model on this is, which I didn't talk about, which is part of the ecosystem. So you have your government ecosystem, and then you have a whole constellation of, let's call them nonprofits, 501c6s, bids, chambers, organizations, et cetera, that are sitting there trying to influence policy one way or the other, influence a decision. One of the things that a bid or a chamber would do, it's like, oh, we see that this particular item's coming up on city council, or this is coming up to a vote. This is what our statement is. We'll poll our members, and this is what our statement is, and this is how we're going to go ahead and take action on this. They will have those connections to go ahead and start talking to, your council member, your representative, your assembly member, or whatever it happens to be on that. So coming back to it, as a citizen, you should be aware of the people that are in that orbit that are doing that. As an organization, one of the things they want to do is, because again, like they're nonprofits, they're generating money by whoever wants to see what their cause is going on there. So as the business model on this is that constellation of businesses, or whatever, get a subscription to the site, and they would have the same knowledge that I offer to the citizens for free, that they can go ahead and track all of this. And I can tell you that even when it was my full-time job, that's a full-time job. So automating that would give them an incentive to be on this. Like, oh, I can go ahead and I get an alert that our organization cares about homelessness. Well, that's being talked about at the city council meeting next week, and I better show up to that. And maybe I want to mobilize my folks on that. But also, I want to be able to go ahead and put my statements out there and make sure that my message is clearly heard, that I support this particular stance on this particular issue, ballot thing, whatever that comes up on that. And in turn, like when you get your voice out there, if you have more platforms to get your voice out there, it elevates what your position is in terms of, okay, I want to attract like-minded people. I want to increase my membership. I want to be more visible because it could lead towards donations or grants or whatever it is.
Wow. So that's fascinating. You basically provide people with the information that they need, and then you give them different opportunities or roadways so that they can implement their strategy to make change.
Yeah. Like I simplify it. The information's all public.
Yeah.
So like, it's funny, like I built this in AI. I don't use a whole lot of AI now that's run. Like I just go ahead and kind of aggregate a bunch of information and collect it. Because again, like if you look at how a local ecosystem works, you have your city government, your county government, you have all these different organizations. Even within the city government, like they don't necessarily talk to each other. Like you can have like, your Office of Economic Development versus your Department of Transportation if it's a large city like San Jose and all. And like they don't even talk to each other half of the time that they know what's going on. And in the meantime, like, you have a pothole and like, everybody's pointing at each other. It's like, this is this person's job to like handle this. And it's like, all right, well, tell me who I have to hold accountable to this one right here, and let them know what's going on. Like, I don't want to hear this isn't my job. It's like, if it's not your job,
right,
then
it's like
you tell me
dealing with
whose job that
100.
is.
It sounds like instead of dealing with 100 subcontractors in a big construction thing where everybody's pointing their fingers this way, you give these people clarity. So how do people, just tell us how people in your area, like what area do you do this in, and how can people plug into your AI?
Well, like it's a website, civiccause.com. You can just go ahead and log into
So
it.
we will link that. Civic, say it one more time.
civiccause.com. Right now, it's only live in San Jose and in Santa Clara County. So it's kind of a test pilot. I built this myself in a couple of months. So if this goes well over here, I will have the opportunity to go ahead and spread it out. It's a very Silicon Valley thing to start off doing something like this. And aside from the fact that I know the ecosystem now pretty well, having been immersed in it, I'll give you another interesting statistic about Santa Clara County, which was where I live. There are 12 trillion, that's with a T, trillion-dollar companies in the world right now. Like if you go ahead and ChatGPT, look it up.
Yeah.
4 of them are in Santa Clara County right now.
Damn.
Yeah. And that's not counting Facebook, which is 1 county over in San Mateo County. That's not counting Tesla, which is 1 county over in Alameda County. And that's not counting the fact that you have Anthropic.
Are you serious?
And so the wealth out here is insane. Like the cost of living out here it's the highest in the country right now because of the amount of wealth that's being generated over here. Like, and if you don't think those billionaires and potentially trillionaires coming up, like, don't have an influence on how politics, things going on. Like, 30 miles away from me right now, 30 plus, it's like, the OpenAI versus, Sam Altman versus Elon Musk are testifying against each other over in nearby Alameda County in Oakland right now. But the concentration of wealth here is insane.
That is a crazy amount of market capitalization concentrated at once. I didn't know that they were all like, that market capitalization is insane. To have a market cap of $1 trillion 10 years ago, people would be like, that, whoa. Now you have all these companies in one area. Jason, we'll have to fly down there and do some hobnobbing.
I mean, and jiu-jitsu is very prevalent. Like, my old roommate, Dave Camarillo, is now like Mark Zuckerberg's like personal guru right now. He's like gotten super into training and stuff like that. And
would he be Elon Musk?
From what I heard, like Zuckerberg takes his training really seriously. Like he's been doing that for a while. Like he participated in a local tournament. Elon Musk, when that whole fight thing went over, spent one day over in Texas, trained with Danaher and Gordon Ryan, maybe a second day on them. That's it. Like, it's really transformed Zuckerberg's life and how much he's gone ahead and pushed.
So your money's on Zuckerberg.
Yeah, but like also like at the time, yeah, Musk doesn't train at all anymore right now. Like Zuckerberg still does this multiple times a week. So yeah, my money would be on Zuckerberg at this point.
There it is for the record.
From what I heard, though, Musk was a lot better than people expected to be. Like he came in there and he actually wasn't completely clueless from what I've heard. So, the CEO that I would absolutely put my money on which is also around here, Electronic Arts, the company that makes like FIFA and all that. The CEO of that company is actually a black belt in Jiu Jitsu under Career Gracie. He's been a black belt for a while, actually. Australian guy. I think Sean Fanning is a black belt in Jiu Jitsu now under Carly. So like, in terms of like the culture out here and whatnot, it's funny. We met on LinkedIn. The only reason why I have a LinkedIn account is because I was a substitute Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu teacher over at LinkedIn headquarters. Like I taught there because one of my students was running the classes over there. They were going to be out of town for a while. So I covered like a couple of months worth of classes there just on a lark. I could have been the instructor over at Apple. Paul Schreiner, who was at Marcelo Garcia's, is now back in California. When he was leaving to go to Marcelo Garcia's, he tried to give me that gig, but I was just opening my gym at that point, and I didn't want to commit to doing something on that. Google has its programs right now. So it's one of these kind of corporate benefits right now that they do have on-site jiu-jitsu out there. But EA is like kind of its own thing. Like most of them, it's like, it's once a week and they come over there. Like my buddy that teaches over at EA Batata, I think he teaches 4 or 5 days a week there. I don't know if the CEO does that there, but it's an actual academy inside of, it's not just a mat that they lay down and they're training things. It's like there's an actual dedicated place that they train over at Electronic Arts.
Cutting edge.
That's awesome.
Cutting edge. Man. Wow. We went into
High
the
level,
deep on
Frank.
that.
High level.
I love this. Love this economics, business, BJJ. This is like so much fun to talk about. And I really didn't know about that capital concentration there and how many CEOs. So I basically, for my students listening, if you want to be a CEO, maybe you should take some jiu-jitsu.
Somebody described it as the new golf. Like if you want to go ahead and like, make connections and whatnot on that, do it that way. We had we're not known in San Jose as being the capital of the world in terms of like conventions and stuff like that. That would certainly be Vegas. But a couple of weeks ago, like NVIDIA has their big conference here. And again, NVIDIA is a $4 trillion. So like we had 30,000 people come in from around the world and stuff like that. So, it's a good time. So we'll always get a couple of folks that are in town for that conference to come in and train with us at that point. Yeah. It's, just purely on a networking basis, get yourself to a jiu-jitsu gym. Like, you never know who you're going to find on the mat, which we all know, like, or I think you guys know it's true and stuff like that. But really, it's like you could walk in and find yourself like rolling with a CEO or of a pretty major company, if not, or somebody that has like those kind of connections and things like that. The networking power on this. And the funny thing to me about this is it's known, but it's not super well known. It's like, if you're like, I guess Zuckerberg is a little bit more closely followed. So like all of us in jiu-jitsu know that he trains, but like, I don't know if that's a topic of conversation when he comes up in quote unquote mainstream media and stuff like that. There's almost kind of like this.
It is because I have students who don't do jiu-jitsu and they ask me, Mr. D, do you think Zuckerberg, do you think you could beat him? Mr. D, do you think he could beat Elon Musk? Mr. D. And these are kids who don't do jiu-jitsu. So it definitely has hit.
Yeah. And, with education and whatnot and the kids coming up at this point, your ability to network is probably going to be the most valuable thing to you. It's like, take the opportunities, learn, do some hard stuff on there, talk to a bunch of people. What's one of the better opportunities right now to get to go ahead and talk to a bunch of people, like, and meet people from different walks of life. Like, jiu-jitsu's 100% it's given me like so many great things in my life, but probably the best thing that it's given me is the relationships I built off of this, and the relationships you never would have expected to have.
Yeah. So that our listeners know, the reason the way that I found Gumby and invited him here to the podcast is that he made a post on LinkedIn about a morning BJJ class for corporate professionals. So can you tell everybody about your corporate professionals BJJ 6:30 a.m. class that you host?
Yeah, that was a bit of marketing on my part, obviously. I've been doing a 6:30 a.m. class since the very beginning. Actually, nowadays with having 4 gyms, it's the only class I actually teach anymore. And the folks that come in at 6:30 in the morning, you have to be a little bit dedicated to do that. You're coming in before work. And it's also the mindset. Like, I've been doing it 30 years. Like 30 years ago, I was a maniac. The idea of doing a 6:30 a.m. class would not, like, the idea of doing a class and then going off feeling refreshed from work it's actually kind of, quite frankly, a little weird to me now. Like, when I trained, like, it would take me 10 minutes to get off the mat, like, because I was done. Like, I gave everything I had, every single class. And then I had to curl up in a ball for the next couple of hours afterwards and recuperate from that. And then that was the morning session. And I'd go back at night and do it again. Like, that was my life for a long time. It's not anymore right now. Like, I have a different attitude. Like, that pace that I kept back then was kill me. And I have to realize that. Like, so like the idea is, it's like, I want to do jiu-jitsu and I want to, I want this to be part of my life. And I've gone through all that hard stuff. And not that I'm not willing to do that again. I don't even know if I have the capability to do that anymore.
So what do you?
I was about to say, no, like the biggest demographic I've seen, there's a couple of demographics that have really grown in my gyms, but people over 40 starting jiu-jitsu and even over 50 is like one of the biggest growing demographics that I have. What do they want to do? Like, they want all the benefits it is in their life, They're like that mental, spiritual, physical, career, whatever they want out of it. They've heard of these things. Like, they want to be able to do that. And they want to be able to do it in a self-controlled, and they want to be able to do it in a place. Well, those folks are more likely to come at 6:30 a.m. I'll tell you, my active competitor college students not waking up at 6:30 in the morning to train. Like, I don't see a lot of them coming into my ones. It's the ones that'll go ahead and it's their third space. We can go ahead and they'll talk about whatever. Then they get on to the business of doing jiu-jitsu, and then they shower off and they head off to work. And I've actually recognized that class was that for a long time, but I've never marketed it that way. It's like, if I actually go ahead and put that out there, and quite frankly, if I take a couple of steps back, I do believe that jiu-jitsu is for everybody, but not every class is for everybody. Like, if you want that ultra competitive medal chasing class, you want a different class on this. If you're a brand new student, you need to separate out from there. It's like, again, it comes down to knowing your audience. Well, I know what my audience is at 6:30 in the morning. I might as well just go ahead and embrace that and run with it.
What kind of I'm sorry to interrupt you. What kind of feedback are you getting from the professionals that are coming for this class? What are they telling you they're getting from this?
I mean, to be 100% honest, it's largely the same people that were coming before I called it, quote unquote, the executive class. So, I like to think they like my classes, regardless of how they're labeled. At the end of the day, like how you market it, like you do make some shifts on how the classes are termed based on your audience. But at the end of the day, jiu-jitsu is jiu-jitsu. Like people say, oh, what's old man jiu-jitsu right now? I cheat a lot right now, and I'm going to take every shortcut that I can.
Sounds like
Frank. But I probably should. Yeah. But I probably should have done that when I was in my 20s.
Gumby, read my name. Read my name.
The clock burner.
Yeah,
he has that name for a reason.
So, I'm interested in kind of seeing the growth on that class and how it kind of like the what?
Yeah. So do they tell you that they feel great? Like when they leave your class, like they go off to work and they have an amazing day, like their mind is clearer? What are they saying to you? Do they tell you things?
I hear things like that it's a great way to start off their day. And I don't know if it necessarily is the 6:30 a.m. portion of that, or it's just jiu-jitsu makes things better. It comes back to that conversation we have. It's like you're in controlled, stressful situations, that client, customer, boss, whatever is yelling and getting on your case and all that. How much is it going to stress you out at that point? Like, I've been through those things before. It could stress you out, and don't get me wrong. I'm capable of getting stressed out too, but ideally you deal with it in a better way on that sense. It just kind of sets you in a good way. And I've heard plenty of people tell me that, whether you get that in the morning, whether you get it in the evening, ultimately everybody comes in jiu-jitsu to feel better about themselves. Theoretically, of course, like you're going to have days that sometimes you're the hammer, sometimes you're the nail, some days you're the wood, right? But but ultimately on the longer part of the journey, you do this for the betterment of yourself, because it's a good time, and that's why you come in.
Yeah. Frank, before you get some takeaways, I do have one more question. So, Gumby, I view you as somebody who you owned an academy, you were able to make a difference in the lives of people within your academy. And then you started thinking bigger. You started thinking, having a bigger vision of wanting to make a difference in your community. So what, like you have an issue, right? And you have two sides of an issue. And both of those sides are not really seeing each other's perspectives, right? So that's kind of your vision, is to get them to understand each other's perspective and work together and try to find a solution, right? So what is the biggest mistake that you would say that people make when they want to try to collaborate on an issue?
Sometimes we have to agree to disagree. Like sometimes, I think the biggest mistake that people make, and if you want me to bring this back to jiu-jitsu, I will, is like not having an understanding of their fundamentals. And like, maybe they're speaking on different fundamentals on this. And until you know where until you can find that common ground, until they have this level of fundamental, there's no conversation to be had. And we can, like when I say we can agree to disagree, it's like we have to know what we're talking about in the first case. Be that in jiu-jitsu, be that in business, be that in life. Too many people focus on the superficial things, like they can't really get down to the essence of whatever it is. Or another way of putting it, like, they tend to overcomplicate when they should simplify. Like, any number of these ways I'm trying to tell you in the same thing right
It
now,
sounds
but
so much, it sounds right.
yeah.
It
But
really does. It's so parallel. Everything, all of that philosophy is so powerful.
Frank, what time is it?
It's your favorite time of the program, tap out time, where we package nicely for you to tap out and take all this wisdom home with you and to think about it. Gumby, something we didn't talk about a lot is your journalism, but the way that you express yourself, I can see that you must have been great at your journalism. You have a lot of phrases, the way that you take a complicated idea and simplify it, and you have like these wrapped up phrases that really embody what you're trying to say was very impressive through this interview. I'm just going to try to give our listeners a couple of things that struck me. The first thing that you said, and you use this word all the time throughout our conversation, was being stubborn. And I think that is a great quality when you really want something. Anything that you want in life that is valuable, you have to be stubborn. You have to
can you
say
tell
no.
this to my wife, by the way?
I'm definitely not going to get involved in that because I know I'm going to. I know how to
Happy
pick my
wife, happy
battles.
life.
Yes,
Mm,
jiu-jitsu has taught me to pick my battles, and that's not one I'm going to fight.
there you go. There's
um,
your wisdom to
and
me.
I like the way you couched the stubbornness in your physical attributes when you started in jiu-jitsu. It was very, very, you said, like, it was a little harsher than it is now. You were 150 pounds. That had to have sucked because I know being lighter, it does. It's a big disadvantage. And the fact that you're like, all right, this guy's 250 pounds. I've seen other people do it, and I believe that it can be done. And I think that's also something that you highlighted for us. You have to believe. You have to believe that it can be done, and that belief will feed your stubbornness, and then the cycle is complete. You'll get there. Some other things in my notes. I love the way you talked about the power of a community. It's really interesting. I was studying in Spain. I was visiting Spain with my son Jake, and we were looking at the lifestyle. And the Spanish lifestyle is so community based. You see old people hanging out with their grandkids. They're outside all the time. They're actually people who really still play in a park. And my son Jake told me that they did a study of why do people in Italy live so long. There's a certain town that they have a very long lifespan, and it's because they have a sense of community. A sense of community actually keeps you alive longer because it reduces your stress. And while our culture is not as community based as Europe's, if you join a jiu-jitsu gym, you are going to have a great community. And you can build off of that into the wider community, which I think is great, which what you did. You talked about not being predictable. And Jason and I have never heard anybody talk about the quality of being unpredictable in jujitsu and in life. And I do think that's a very important thing. It keeps you from being boring and it keeps you from being overly comfortable. So a great takeaway right there. One of the terms that I absolutely love, and I'm going to use this, you were talking about training in controlled, stressful situations on a regular basis so that in the real world, you are used to that. You do that. You know what pressure is and you know there's a way out. You called it grace under fire. That I don't know if that's your own term, but that's a beautiful term.
I
Race
definitely
Under
didn't
Fire.
invent that one.
Well, hey, you introduced it to me, so I'm going to give you the credit for it. That
All
is a
right.
beautiful thing about jujitsu and about being successful in business. If you can be graceful under fire, you're going to shine. There's so many here. I'm just trying to call out the big ones. One of the things that you did, we didn't really talk about it, but I got this. I called this out from your story. I like the way you said, I did this, I liked this, and I used that as a base to do my next thing. I found something I like to do. And when I graduated from that, I decided I want to keep some of that and I want to build on it in a different direction, which is how you got into the whole civic piece of what you do. I think that's awesome. And it's a philosophy in life that we have to keep in mind. You don't need to be rigid. You need to take your past experiences, find what you're good at, find what you like, and parlay that. What I also loved, and I'm going to share this with my students, it's so funny because I always tell students two of my biggest regrets, like growing up in the business world, because I used to be in the corporate world. Two things that hurt me. A, I never learned to play golf, and B, I never really followed sports like the Celtics or baseball, the Red Sox. And I tell my students those are two great things because that's you're from Boston. How about those Patriots? It's just nice if you know something about the Patriots. And golf, because a lot of business is done on the green. But I like the way you said BJJ is the new golf. So now I don't feel so bad about myself. And this is definitely true. We wouldn't know you right now. Now we have a connection in California just because all do jujitsu. I'm going to
Beautiful
tell my
thing, huh?
students, it is a beautiful thing. I tell my students, learn a little bit about sports, play some golf, and do BJJ if you want to go far in business. So that was great. And then just wrapping it up, I think that you showed us how believing in your goals and being consistent and also flowing with the opportunities is the real roadmap to success. And that's what our listeners are going to take from you. So thank you for those lessons.
It's been a fun time.
It has been a fun time. And we want to roll with you to see how Gumby you are.
Yeah.
So you have to come to our gym one day.
Sure.
Also, I'm going to ask you to do us a favor. You sound very, very well connected and all your journalism, everything you've done. If you could include a link to this episode when it comes in to all of your people that you know, that would be very helpful to us to get us more popularity in your area. We'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, not a problem.
Civiccause.com.
Yes, we're going to put it in the
Civiccause.com,
link.
yeah.
We're going to put a link for you and get you some traffic. Well, we're going to help you as well.
Appreciate it.
Right. Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Gumby. We appreciate you. And we know you're a
Hey, this
busy
was
guy,
fun.
so we really appreciate you.
Not
Yes.
a problem. Not a problem on that.
So if we ever if we ever make our way out to your area in the Silicon Valley area or Santa Clara County area, we will definitely look you up. And then also if you happen to make your way to the Boston area, we would love to have you visit our school. And Frank will show you firsthand how he burns the clock.
Yeah, you will see all of my techniques and they help me survive. I could easily burn 30 seconds off the 5-minute roll and that 30 seconds saves me at the end. So yes, we're gonna actually do a teach-in seminar on clock burning, and we will give you free access to that.
It's a skill, right? And everybody has to kind of know you got to know what your time is. You got to be aware of your surroundings. That's you applying a great principle there.
Well,
Every
I
trick you got.
appreciate that. I appreciate that. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you so much. And thank you to our listeners. We love you. We appreciate you. Share this with everybody you know, and we'll catch you on the flip side. Take care.
Thanks, Gumby.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. It was fun. Take care.